Gladys, así no es. That's not how you do it. Ru, déjame tranquila. I've been doing it like this for years. It was Sunday, meaning it was Sunday dinner time. It has been a tradition since even before I was born. My grandma has been coming over to my house and cooking us dinner every Sunday for as long as I could remember. I look forward to this day every week, but what I don't look forward to are the arguments. Because alongside these Sunday dinners come the many disagreements between my mother and my grandmother. You are taking too long with the food. I'm cooking as fast as I can. It's not my fault. The rice is cooking slowly. Well, hurry up because I'm hungry. My grandmother didn't say anything. She always ends up being the one not to say anything. My mother attacks, screams, and shouts, but my grandmother chooses her battles. My grandmother always allows my mother to have the final word. I just hate looking at this. I go up to my grandma and I say, "It smells great. I can't wait to eat it." Every time she fights with my mother, I give my grandmother small innuendos indicating that I'm on her side. She just smiled and said, "Gracias, mi hija. Now go set the table. The food should be ready any minute." We ate like we eat every Sunday, in practical silence. We finish and I do the dishes. My grandmother gets ready to leave. After she puts on her jacket, she's off to take the train to her house. And I am left with anticipation for another week, for another Sunday dinner. The next day, my mother came home pissed. I asked her, "What's wrong?" She said, "I was supposed to meet up with your grandmother downtown today. She came late. Can you believe that?" Well, she is 70 years old. She needs to take it easy and do things slow. Ah, please, Karina. She could have left her house earlier. She's always late for everything. I'm sick and tired of you blaming her for everything. Let go of your grudge. You are 45 years old. Get over it. My mom had a shocked look on her face. It was the first time I had ever yelled at her like that. All she could say was, "Excuse me?" I was a bit stunned myself, but I couldn't hold back anymore. You need to grow up. You need to stop fighting. Hell, I act more mature than you do. I couldn't believe I was doing this. I couldn't believe I was talking to my mom like this. Karina, it's none of your business, and you don't speak to your mother like this. Well, where do you think I learned it from? I learned it from the best. You. I grabbed my keys and left the house. I thought my mother was going to come after me, but she didn't. I sat on the train and thought about my mother and her childhood. See, my mom wasn't raised by my grandmother. She was born in the Dominican Republic, and around the same time, my grandmother got her visa to come to the United States. It was a tough decision, but my grandmother chose to leave my mother behind with her father in the Dominican Republic and start a new life in the United States. She wanted to get herself settled in the United States so that when my mother got her papers, she would have a place to go. My grandmother got a job, an apartment, everything for her daughter. But my mom doesn't see it that way. The way she sees it, she was left behind. Even though my grandmother visited her often, my mother felt like she didn't have a mother. She blamed her awful childhood on my grandmother. She used to say how she never had a female figure to look up to. She was alone, and because of this, she holds resentment in her heart. I don't think she could ever get over that. I arrived at my grandmother's house. When she opened the door, she seemed shocked to see me. She said, "What happened, Karina?" I told her. I left. I couldn't handle it anymore. She treats you like dirt. "Come inside," she said, with a soft but concerning tone. I sat at the dining table. She sat right next to me. There was a moment of silence. Out of nowhere, I just said, "Why? How? I don't get it. You think by now she would have forgiven you. You have been good to us. You have been there for her kids. Isn't that enough to make up for the mistakes? Mi hija, it isn't that easy. These are mistakes I have to live with for the rest of my life. She paused for a bit and then continued. You know, even though there is always a disagreement every Sunday, I hold on to those dinners because it's the only way for me to remain close to her. I have hope. We heard the doorbell ring. I knew who it was. I went to go open the door, waiting for my mother to scold me, but instead, she barges in and went straight to my grandma. This is your fault. You did this. Me? What did I do? You got my own daughter against me. Haven't you done enough damage? I yelled, enough, stop fighting, but that didn't stop her. You ruined my life. Don't you get that? All I ever wanted when I was a little girl was a mom. You weren't there when I needed you. You preferred to be out playing La Americana over being by your own daughter's side. I'm sorry. Sorry? Sorry isn't enough. I hate you. I hated you for so long. I'm tired of hating you, but I can't stop. And then she cried. It was the first time I've ever seen my mother cry like that. She's such a strong, independent woman. But right now, she's a weak little girl who needs her mom. My grandmother walks closer to her daughter. She grabs her by the shoulders and says, "That's okay. We can work on that together. But Ruth, it was the hardest decision I've ever made in my life. You've got to believe me. I love you so much. Te amo mucho. Through all the fights and arguments, I always loved you." My grandmother grabbed my mother and wrapped her arms around her. She hugged her tightly and passionately. For the first time ever in my life, I saw my mother actually hug her back. And it wasn't meaningless. It symbolized a new start. They both sobbed in each other's arms. It was so beautiful. In the middle of this picture-perfect moment, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I looked back and saw the nurse. She told me I had been sleeping for about an hour as she was changing the IV bag. I felt my phone ring in my pocket. I saw the text from my mom asking where I was. I texted her back saying I was going to sleep over Kayla's house again. She would kill me if she really knew where I was. Wow, what a dream that was. I rub my eyes as my mind continues to wake up. My grandmother also opens her eyes. She's so pale and bald, but still so gorgeous. Chemo was a bitch today, but she's a fighter. Fuck this cancer. She reaches over for my hand and I grab hers. She says, "Ru." "No, abuela, it's Karina." "Ru, te amo. I love you. I'm sorry. Perdóname." At this point, she was practically squeezing my hand. But little by little, she was losing grip. I was crying. I couldn't stop. She laid her head back on her pillow and closed her eyes. It was just her and I in that lonely room, plus the machine that went beep, 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 beep.